Imagine this. You're sitting in an empty room at 3 a.m., with only the hum of the refrigerator breaking the silence. Your phone is dead. No notifications, no messages, no sign that anyone anywhere remembers you exist. And then, like a cold wave, it hits you, that pressure in your chest, the voice whispering that maybe you really are alone. Not just now, but forever. And the worst part isn't the loneliness itself, it's what you're willing to do to escape it. How many decisions have you made just to avoid that emptiness? How many times have you said yes when you wanted to scream no? Stayed in relationships that were rotting from the inside, accepted crumbs of affection, endured humiliation, betrayed your own values, all because the terror of being alone felt worse than the slow death of losing yourself. Here's the paradox. The fear of loneliness doesn't protect you from abandonment. It condemns you to it. The more you cling to people, titles, identities, anything that promises to keep the ghost of rejection at bay, the more of a stranger you become to yourself. And that is the real loneliness, the one you carry inside even when surrounded by applause. Why does something so universal, the need for connection, turn into such a self-destructive force? Why, instead of bringing us closer to others, does it pull us further from ourselves? Loneliness isn't the problem. The problem is what you're willing to sacrifice at the altar of the illusion of belonging. Your creativity, your truth, your freedom. Think of the last time you felt deeply seen. Not tolerated, not useful, but truly understood. Now, think of the last time you sold yourself out to avoid being cast aside. Which of those memories hurts more? Here's the question that will echo through the next sections. What are you becoming just to avoid being alone? And what have you already lost in the process? But to understand how to escape this trap, we first need to unravel why it exists, and why you didn't even realize you were already caught in it. Have you ever wondered why the fear of loneliness hurts so much? It's not just an emotional reaction, it's a primal wound etched into your nervous system before you even had words to name it. The earliest humans who were excluded from their tribes died. Without protection, fire, or allies, they became easy prey for predators or simply succumbed to the cold. Your brain still carries that survival code. Being left behind is a death sentence. But here's evolution's cruel irony. The same instinct meant to keep you safe now imprisons you. Carl Jung would call this dynamic the shadow, the rejected aspect of your being that, when ignored, controls you from the darkness. The more you deny your fear of loneliness, the more it dictates your choices. The soul-crushing job, the love that consumes your dignity, the masks you wear so well you've forgotten your own face. Friedrich Nietzsche saw in this submission the greatest danger to the human spirit. Whoever cannot obey himself will be commanded, he warned. And that's exactly what happens when fear of loneliness becomes your inner tyrant. You obey others' expectations, cultural scripts, empty relationships, all to avoid the silence that, ironically, could lead you back to yourself. Jean-Paul Sartre, meanwhile, saw loneliness as a mirror of human freedom. Hell is other people, he wrote, not because people are evil but because they become the stage where we perform our own self-denial. Every time you modify your opinion to be accepted, every time you stifle your truth to avoid conflict, you're fleeing a deeper reality. You are the only being you can never abandon. Which raises the question no one wants to face. If you can't stand being alone with yourself, what kind of company are you offering others? Here lies the philosophical core of the problem. The fear of loneliness is, at its root, fear of yourself. Fear of the void you've never explored. Fear of the silence that might reveal who you truly are, beyond roles, beyond masks, beyond cheap validation. But how did this fear infiltrate our lives so deeply? The answer lies in a modern poison: digital loneliness. We live in history's most connected era, yet also its most isolated. Social media gives the illusion of companionship without presence. Relationships become transactions. I'll give you attention if you validate me, and when the accounts don't balance, desperation grows. Neurologist Viktor Frankl, a concentration camp survivor, understood existential emptiness better than anyone. He knew the opposite of loneliness isn't company, it's meaning. And that's where the trap snaps shut. When you seek in others what can only be found within, you're not connecting. You're emptying yourself. And so, without realizing it, you begin living a life that isn't yours, paying a price you can't even calculate. Have you ever stopped to observe what this silent fear is building, or destroying, in your life? It's not just the big decisions it erodes. It's the daily micro-compromises, those nearly imperceptible ones. The forced smile when you want to scream, the complicit silence in the face of injustice, the swallowed opinion because it's not worth causing conflict. Each of these small surrenders is a brick in a wall that, over time, separates you from yourself. Neuroscience reveals a vicious mechanism. When you prioritize social acceptance over personal truth, your brain reacts as if facing physical danger. The amygdala, the fear center, triggers alarm signals while the prefrontal cortex, responsible for rational decisions, weakens. In other words, the fear of loneliness literally reduces your ability to think clearly. You become a hostage to your own archaic neural wiring. And then come the paradoxical consequences. The self-fulfilling prophecy of rejection. The more you fear abandonment, the more clingy behavior you exhibit, and the more you push others away. Psychologists call this attachment anxiety, a suffocating need for reassurance that, ironically, makes relationships unsustainable. Like a thirsty man drinking salt water, your craving for connection only deepens your emotional dehydration. The tyranny of normalcy. Aldous Huxley, in Brave New World, predicted a society where people would love their servitude. Here's what he didn't foresee: that we would become our own jailers. When fear of loneliness dictates your choices, you stop pursuing what you want and start chasing what you think others will approve of. Careers, relationships, lifestyles, everything becomes a performance where the only audience that matters is the collective shadow of others' validation. Death by self-censorship. Studies on creativity show that revolutionary ideas emerge in moments of deliberate solitude. But when you systematically avoid being with yourself, what are you sacrificing? Masterpieces never created. Businesses never born. Versions of yourself that were never given permission to exist. The poet Rainer Maria Rilke knew this when he wrote, "Solitude is the soil where all that you are matures. By avoiding it, you're pruning your own potential." The most unsettling part? These consequences are rarely visible right away. Like a slow-acting poison, the effects only show when it's too late, when you look back and realize you've built an entire life on fear, not authenticity. But there is a way out, and it begins with a revolution no one else can wage for you. What if everything you believed about loneliness was wrong? Imagine for a moment that the emptiness you fear isn't an abyss, but a portal. That the loneliness which feels so threatening is actually the only territory where you can truly rediscover yourself. This shift in perspective isn't just philosophical musing, it's the first act of rebellion against fear's tyranny. The path to freedom begins with a brutal acknowledgement: you're already alone. Not in the catastrophic way your fear projects, but as a fundamental truth of existence. No other human can breathe for you, dream for you, or die for you. This essential solitude isn't your enemy, it's your basic condition of freedom. When you stop denying it, something extraordinary happens. It transforms from phantom to ally. The 3 pillars of liberation. 1. The art of sacred solitude. The ancient Stoics practiced premeditatio malorum, the deliberate contemplation of worst-case scenarios. Applied to loneliness, this exercise becomes revelatory. Spend an hour, a day, even a full week with only your own company. Not as punishment but as an experiment. You'll discover something startling. The monster of loneliness was just the echo of your own unrealized potential. 2. Radical emotional economy. Danish philosopher Søren Kierkegaard argued that life can only be understood backwards, but must be lived forwards. Apply this to your relationships, which exist from genuine connection and which are just existential stopgaps. Start firing people, activities, and commitments that only exist to silence your fear. This isn't cruel, it's an act of integrity with yourself. 3. Creative refusal. Here's a secret no one tells you. Real relationships only form when you have something authentic to offer, and that only happens when you stop emptying yourself for scraps of attention. Artists know this. When Virginia Woolf demanded a room of one's own, she wasn't just asking for physical space, she was claiming the right to creative solitude, that fertile ground where authentic ideas are born. The final paradox. Here's the truth that will resonate in your chest. The more capable you become of being alone, the less lonely you'll be. Authentic people magnetize real connections. When you stop clinging desperately to others, you uncover a sublime mystery. The best relationships aren't those you need, but those you choose. And so we arrive at the final frontier, where fear and freedom reveal themselves as 2 sides of the same coin. And then you finally see all of it: the fear, the compromises, the nights you contorted yourself to fit where you never belonged, was never really about loneliness. It was about power. The power you gave away to the world. The power you denied yourself. Here's the revelation that shatters the illusion. What you call fear of loneliness is actually fear of your own unlived greatness. When you avoid being alone, what you're really fleeing is the confrontation with the potential you haven't dared to fulfill. The final mask. Carl Jung believed even our darkest fears are disguised messengers. In this case, the fear of loneliness is an urgent warning. You are betraying yourself. Every time you silence your truth to keep the peace, dim your light to avoid outshining others, trade your freedom for crumbs of acceptance, you're not just avoiding loneliness, you're committing an act of self-erasure. German philosopher Martin Heidegger saw existential anxiety as a call to authenticity. In this light, your fear isn't an enemy, it's an alarm. It sounds every time you stray from the person you were born to be. The cosmic turning point. Here's the secret spiritual traditions have known for millennia. Loneliness is the temporary price of freedom. Freedom is the eternal reward of loneliness faced. When writer Hermann Hesse wrote, "Whoever wants to be born must first destroy a world," he was speaking of this exact moment, when you realize the safety of empty relationships costs more than the risk of authenticity. The awakening. Now you understand. Every real connection begins with the courage to disconnect. First from others' expectations, then from your own masks. Love worth having doesn't ask you to shrink, it expands who you already are. Your emptiness was never about lacking people, it was about an excess of lived lies. You're no longer trapped in the illusion. Now you know the most liberating truth of all. It's not the world abandoning you when you're alone. It's you abandoning yourself each time you fled from who you are. And that is the only loneliness that truly matters. The circle closes. Return to the beginning. That empty room at 3 a.m. The silence. The dead phone. Only now you see what was always there. Not a void to fear, but a mirror, waiting at last to reflect your true face.